The moment didn't feel real at first. It felt like one of those exaggerated sports narratives that people tell years later, the kind that slowly grows bigger with each retelling. But this wasn't history being rewritten after the fact. This was history happening in real time, unfolding possession by possession, pass by pass, with a player who refused to follow the script everyone else had quietly accepted. 8 months away from the game is supposed to humble you. It's supposed to slow you down, strip away your rhythm, remind you that basketball doesn't wait for anyone. But when Caitlin Clark stepped back onto that court, it didn't look like she was catching up. It looked like the game had been frozen in place, waiting for her to return and take control again. What made it even more surreal was the environment itself. This wasn't a forgiving stage. This wasn't a quiet return in a low-stakes setting. This was international competition, where every possession carries weight, where every mistake gets punished instantly, and where teams arrive prepared, disciplined, and desperate. And yet, from the moment Clark began dictating the pace, something shifted. The chaos that had swallowed Team USA early on suddenly became structure. The confusion turned into clarity, and the pressure that had been building in the arena flipped into anticipation, as if everyone watching could sense that they were witnessing something rare. But what truly separated this performance wasn't just the numbers. Even though the numbers alone were staggering, it was the control. Coming off an 8-month absence, most players would focus on surviving their minutes, finding their timing, easing back into the speed of competition. Clark did the opposite. She accelerated everything. She processed the defense faster than it could react, broke pressure schemes before they fully formed, and turned situations that looked dangerous into opportunities that felt inevitable. It wasn't just skill. It was command. The kind of command that makes teammates better instantly and leaves opponents questioning their own preparation. And as the tournament progressed, it became impossible to treat that first game as an outlier. If anything, it was just the opening chapter. Each game added another layer, another record, another reminder that this wasn't a temporary surge. This was sustained dominance. 5 games in 7 days is a test of endurance even for players in peak condition, and yet Clark never showed the fatigue that should have been unavoidable. Instead, she looked sharper as the competition intensified. More comfortable as the stakes rose, more decisive as the defenses adjusted died by the time the final whistle blew on the last game. The numbers had stacked into something almost unbelievable. 14 records, an undefeated run, an MVP award that felt less like a recognition and more like an inevitability. And perhaps most striking of all, the sense that this wasn't even the peak. It felt like a beginning disguised as a breakthrough, a glimpse of what might come rather than a culmination of what already had. And that's where the story takes a sharper turn. Because greatness in sports rarely exists in isolation. It creates reactions. It shifts narratives. It forces comparisons that people aren't always comfortable making. While Clark was rewriting the record books on the court, there were conversations happening off it. Questions about recognition, about opportunity, about who gets positioned as the face of the sport and why. And those questions became louder when contrasted with the absence of one of the game's most established stars. The tension wasn't just about one comment or one moment. It was about a pattern that had been building, a contrast between two trajectories moving in opposite directions. On one side, a player ascending at a pace that seemed almost unnatural, backed by performances, numbers, and growing global attention. On the other, a player with an already established legacy. Watching that rise unfold from a distance, reacting in ways that only added more fuel to the conversation. And then there's the business side. The part of sports that operates quietly until it suddenly doesn't. Because what's happening off the court is just as revealing as what's happening on it. Brands don't invest at this level without reason. Campaigns don't scale this aggressively without data. The shift in attention, in marketing, in resources, it reflects something deeper than hype. It reflects a belief that the audience is changing, that the center of gravity in the sport is moving. and that certain players are becoming more than just athletes. They're becoming symbols of where the game is headed. What makes this moment even more fascinating is how quickly everything has evolved. Not long ago, the conversation around Clark was still filled with questions. Could her style translate? Would her impact hold up against higher levels of competition? Would the hype eventually cool off? Now those questions feel almost outdated. The conversation has shifted from possibility to inevitability, from curiosity to expectation, and perhaps the most important development of all came not from a stat line or a highlight, but from a decision. The shift in coaching approach, the willingness to adapt, to build around what was clearly working instead of forcing a system that didn't fit, it changed everything. Once Clark was given the freedom to fully operate within her strengths, the results spoke for themselves. The offense opened up. The pace became relentless. The team transformed from uncertain to unstoppable almost overnight. That transformation didn't just win games. It sent a message. It showed what happens when the system adjusts to the player instead of the other way around. It created a blueprint that goes beyond one tournament, one roster, one moment in time. It hints at a future where this style of play isn't an exception, but a standard. And that's the bigger picture that's starting to come into focus. This isn't just about records or awards or headlines. It's about a shift in the way the game is played, the way it's marketed, the way it's experienced by fans. It's about a player who isn't just succeeding within the system, but actively reshaping it. The real question now isn't what just happened. It's what happens next. Because if this is what the game looks like after 8 months away, what does it look like with a full season ahead? If this is the baseline, how much higher can it go? And if the sport is already adjusting to keep up, how far can one player push it before it changes completely? So now it turns to you. After everything you've just seen, after everything that's unfolded, where do you think this story is heading? Is this the beginning of a new era in basketball, or just a moment that feels bigger than it is? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is just getting started. And if you want more deep breakdowns like this, more stories that go beyond the headlines and into the moments that actually shape the game, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned. Because the next chapter might be even bigger than this one.